The conference room aboard the Galactic Council's flagship, the Eternal Harmony, had seen many negotiations throughout its 3-century service. Wars had been ended here, treaties signed, and civilizations saved from extinction. But never, in all those years, had anyone thrown a severed head onto the polished conference table during peace talks. Yet here we were. The head in question belonged to Admiral Vex Corvain, the most feared military commander in the hegemony fleet. His 4 eyes stared lifelessly at the ceiling, purple blood still dripping from the cleanly severed neck onto the pristine white surface. The human responsible for this theatrical display stood at the opposite end of the table, arms crossed, waiting. "Well?" Captain Jake Morrison said, his voice carrying that peculiar human mix of casual indifference and barely contained violence. "Are we going to discuss terms, or do you need me to bring more heads?" I, Commander Thex Nalori of the Galactic Council Diplomatic Corps, found myself at a complete loss for words. In my 47 years of service, I had mediated conflicts between gas-breathing Metharians and silicon-based rockfolk. I had successfully negotiated peace between the hive-minded swarm and the fiercely individualistic free traders. But humans were something else entirely. Captain Morrison, I managed, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fact that my 3 hearts were beating at dangerously high speeds. "While we appreciate your decisive action against the hegemony forces, perhaps we could discuss this matter without the need for such graphic displays?" The human tilted his head, a gesture that among his species could mean curiosity, confusion, or in this case, amusement. "Oh, this bothers you. Sorry about that." He reached over and casually pushed the head to one side, where it rolled against the wall with a wet thud. "There. Better?" Better? The most powerful military leader in 3 sectors had just been reduced to a decoration, and this human was asking if it was better. "Much," I lied, my voice cracking slightly on the word. The other council members around the table looked equally disturbed. Ambassador Clix, a tall, reed-like being from the Centauri Collective, had turned a shade of green that I was pretty sure wasn't natural even for her species. General Vorth, our military advisor, kept opening and closing his mouth like a fish, his usually commanding presence reduced to stunned silence. "Excellent," Morrison said, settling into his chair with the casual ease of someone who hadn't just committed what most civilizations would consider a war crime. "Now, about those terms." I cleared my throat, trying to regain some semblance of diplomatic composure. "Before we begin, Captain, perhaps you could explain how you came to possess Admiral Corvain's remains." Morrison's eyes lit up with what humans called a smile, though it looked more like a predatory grimace to most other species. "Oh, that's a fun story. See, old Vex there thought he was pretty clever. Sent his entire fleet to blockade Earth, while he personally led a strike team to capture our capital. Problem was, he didn't account for one tiny little detail. Which was, General Vorth found his voice, though it came out as more of a squeak. Humans don't have a capital. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the ship's life support system seemed to pause in confusion. "I beg your pardon?" Ambassador Clix managed. "No capital, no single point of failure, no convenient target to decapitate our government." Morrison leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying himself. Poor Vex spent 3 days trying to figure out which city to attack first. New York? Washington? London? Beijing? While he was busy playing eeny meeny miny mo with nuclear weapons, we were busy playing a different game entirely. I felt a chill run down my spine. "What game?" asked the Admiral. The way he said it, with that same casual tone one might use to discuss the weather, made my blood run cold. "You hunted him." "Well, not just me. Team effort, really." See, while Vex was trying to figure out how to destroy human civilization, we were tracking his personal ship. Turns out hegemony vessels have a very distinctive energy signature. Also turns out humans are really good at tracking things. Morrison reached into his jacket, and every security officer in the room tensed. What he pulled out wasn't a weapon, but a small device that looked suspiciously like a human communication tablet. He tapped it a few times, and a holographic display appeared above the table. "Here's Vex's ship 3 days ago, sitting pretty in Earth's upper atmosphere." The hologram showed a massive hegemony dreadnought, its hull gleaming with the distinctive blue-black metal of their construction. Beautiful ship, really. Shame about what happened to it. The display shifted, showing the same ship, but now it was a twisted wreck floating in space, its hull torn open like a flower blooming in reverse. "How?" General Vorth whispered. "Oh, that's the beautiful part. We didn't use any fancy weapons. No planet crackers, no quantum torpedoes, no reality warping devices. Just good old-fashioned human ingenuity." Morrison's grin widened. "And a whole lot of garbage." "Garbage?" I couldn't help but ask. "Space junk, orbital debris, defunct satellites. Turns out when you accelerate a broken refrigerator to 0.97 light speed and aim it at a ship's reactor core, it makes a hell of a bang." The hologram shifted again, this time showing a detailed tactical breakdown of the attack. Thousands of small objects, moving at incredible speeds, converging on the hegemony vessel from all directions. It was like watching a swarm of angry insects bring down a giant. Of course, Morrison continued, that was just the opening act. The real fun started when we boarded the wreck. "You boarded a destroyed ship." Ambassador Clix looked like she was going to be sick. Well, parts of it were still intact, including the section where our dear Admiral Vex had barricaded himself with his personal guard. Morrison's expression turned predatory. 27 of the hegemony's finest warriors, all armed with the best weapons their civilization could provide. Against 5 humans with improvised equipment. "And you won?" General Vorth's voice was barely audible. "Oh, we didn't just win, we made it educational." Morrison tapped his tablet again, and the hologram shifted to show the interior of the wrecked ship. "See, the thing about humans is we don't just fight to win, we fight to learn. Every battle teaches us something new about our enemies." The display showed a corridor filled with bodies. Hegemony soldiers, their advanced armor torn and twisted, their weapons scattered uselessly around them. At the far end, a heavily reinforced door stood partially open. Vex thought he was safe behind that door. Thought his armor would protect him. Thought his superior technology would give him an advantage. Morrison's voice dropped to a whisper. He was wrong about all 3. The hologram zoomed in on the door, showing scorch marks and blast damage around the frame. It took us about 6 minutes to get through his defenses. Another 3 to deal with his bodyguards. And then the display shifted one final time, showing the interior of what had obviously been a command center. Broken equipment lined the walls, and in the center of the room, a pool of purple blood marked where Admiral Vex Corvain had made his final stand. He actually begged, at the end, Morrison said conversationally. Offered us technology, territory, his entire fleet. Promised to call off the attack on Earth if we'd just let him live. The human's smile turned cold. We declined. I stared at the display, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. The hegemony had been the dominant military power in this sector for over 2 centuries. Their technology was advanced, their tactics refined, their warriors legendary. And 5 humans had torn through them like they were made of paper. I started, then stopped. What was this? Impressive? Terrifying? Both. "This is why we're here," Morrison finished. "The hegemony sent their best to destroy humanity. We sent them back a message." He gestured casually toward the head in the corner. "Well, part of a message anyway." "Part of a message?" General Vorth looked like he was going to have a heart attack. "Oh yes, see, Vex here was just the opening statement. The real message is what happened to his fleet." Morrison tapped his tablet one more time, and the hologram expanded to show the space around Earth. Where there had once been a massive hegemony armada, now there was only debris. Thousands of pieces of twisted metal and scattered components, drifting slowly through the void. 237 ships, Morrison said matter-of-factly. The pride of the hegemony fleet, gone in 6 hours. The silence that followed was profound. Even the ship's background hum seemed muted, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. How? I finally managed to ask. Humans have a saying, the best defense is a good offense. But we've always preferred a different approach. Morrison's grin was positively feral now. The best defense is making sure your enemy can't attack you ever again. He stood up, moving with the fluid grace of a predator. See, while Vex was busy playing Admiral, we were busy studying his fleet, learning their weaknesses, mapping their systems, finding the flaws in their design. And humans, we're very good at finding flaws. The hologram shifted again, this time showing a detailed schematic of a hegemony warship. Red markers highlighted dozens of vulnerable points throughout the vessel's structure. Every ship has them, Morrison continued. Weak points where the armor is thin, critical systems that aren't properly shielded, design flaws that can be exploited. The hegemony's ships were impressive, but they were also predictable. And predictable things die easily. You destroyed their entire fleet? Ambassador Clix's voice was barely a whisper. Oh, we didn't destroy it. That would have been wasteful. Morrison's smile widened. We recycled it. The hologram zoomed in on one of the debris fields, showing twisted metal being collected by small human ships. Hegemony hull plating makes excellent building material. Their weapons systems are quite advanced, and their engines are surprisingly efficient. We'll put it all to good use. I felt my world spinning. The hegemony had been one of the most powerful military forces in known space. Their technology was centuries ahead of most civilizations, and the humans were talking about turning their fleet into spare parts. I struggled for words, this is unprecedented. Actually, it's pretty standard for humans, Morrison said casually. We've been doing this sort of thing for millennia. Every time someone tries to wipe us out, we learn from the experience. Get stronger, get smarter, get more creative in our solutions. He moved to the window, looking out at the stars. The hegemony made a fundamental error in judgment. They assumed that because we were a young species, we would be easy to defeat. They thought our technology was primitive, our tactics unsophisticated, our resolve weak. Morrison turned back to face us, and for a moment I saw something in his eyes that made my blood freeze. It wasn't anger or hatred. It was something far more dangerous. Curiosity. They were wrong, he said simply. And now they're extinct. The word hung in the air like a curse. Extinct. An entire civilization wiped out in a matter of hours. You killed them all. General Vorth's voice was barely audible. Not all of them. That would have been genocide, and humans don't do genocide. Morrison's expression softened slightly. We killed their military leadership, disabled their war machine, and scattered their colonies. The survivors are welcome to rebuild, but they'll do it under human oversight. I realized I was trembling, not from fear exactly, but from the sudden understanding of what humanity represented. They weren't just another species seeking their place in the galaxy. They were something new, something that changed the fundamental rules of the game. Which brings us to why we're here, Morrison continued, returning to his seat. The Galactic Council has a choice to make. You can continue to treat humanity as a minor species, a curiosity to be studied and controlled. Or you can accept us as equals and work with us to build something better. He leaned forward, his eyes locking onto mine. But understand this, we're not asking for permission. We're offering partnership. The choice is yours, but the outcome is inevitable. What outcome? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Humanity's expansion into the galaxy. We're not content to stay on one world, playing by rules made by species who fear change. We're going to explore, to grow, to learn. And we're going to do it whether you help us or not. Morrison stood up again, moving to the head of the table. The hegemony tried to stop us. They had the most advanced military in known space, the finest technology, the best tactics. And they failed. Spectacularly. He picked up Admiral Corvain's head, holding it up like a trophy. This is what happens to those who try to cage humanity. This is what happens to those who mistake our youth for weakness, our compassion for softness. With casual indifference, he tossed the head back onto the table, where it landed with a wet thud. So, council members, what's it going to be? Partnership or conquest? Because frankly, we're prepared for either. The room fell silent again, but this time it was different. This wasn't the stunned silence of shock, but the heavy quiet of a decision being made. I looked around the table at my fellow council members, seeing the same realization in their eyes that I felt in my hearts. Humanity wasn't asking to join the galactic community. They were announcing their arrival. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. I could hear my own breathing, the subtle hum of the ship's recycling systems, even the faint tick of Ambassador Clix's chronometer. Finally, General Vorth cleared his throat. "Captain Morrison," he began, his voice steadier than I expected, "your demonstration has certainly made your point clear. But surely you understand that the Council cannot simply capitulate to threats, regardless of how effective they might be." Morrison laughed, a sound that somehow managed to be both genuine and terrifying. "Threats? General, you misunderstand. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm providing context. Context. I found myself asking, for the conversation we're about to have. Morrison returned to his seat, but this time he didn't sit. Instead, he leaned against the back of the chair, his posture relaxed but alert. "See, the thing about humans is, we don't actually want to conquer anyone. Too much paperwork, too much administration, too much dealing with bureaucrats who think they know better." He gestured around the room. Present company excluded, of course. Ambassador Clix leaned forward, her elongated features creased with concern. "Then what do you want?" "Freedom," Morrison said simply. "The freedom to explore, to trade, to grow, to make mistakes and learn from them. The freedom to be human." His expression hardened. "What we don't want is to be told where we can go, what we can do, who we can talk to by a committee of aliens who've never set foot on Earth." "The Council exists to maintain order," General Vorth protested, "to prevent conflicts between species, to ensure peaceful coexistence. And how's that working out for you?" Morrison asked with a raised eyebrow. "Because from where I'm sitting it looks like you just let the hegemony build a massive war fleet and point it at a peaceful planet. Some peacekeeping." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. The Council was attempting to negotiate a peaceful resolution. While Earth burned? Morrison's voice turned cold. While human children hid in bunkers as hegemony bombs fell from the sky. While entire cities were evacuated because your negotiations were taking too long. The accusations hit like physical blows. Everything he said was true. We had known about the hegemony's plans for months, had seen their fleet mobilizing, had received intelligence reports about their intentions. And we had done nothing but talk. "The Council operates on consensus," I said weakly. "We cannot act without agreement from all member species." "And how many species agreed that humanity should be exterminated?" Morrison asked quietly. The question hung in the air like poison gas. I looked around the table, seeing the uncomfortable expressions on my colleagues' faces. The truth was, several species had voted to allow the hegemony to proceed. Not because they wanted humanity destroyed, but because they feared the alternative. "I see," Morrison said, reading our silence correctly. "So the Council's idea of peacekeeping is to let the strong devour the weak, as long as it's done quietly and doesn't disrupt trade routes." "That's not fair," Ambassador Clix protested. "The Council has prevented dozens of wars." "By sacrificing the inconvenient species," Morrison countered. "By letting bullies have their way as long as they don't make too much noise about it." He moved to the window again, looking out at the stars. "Tell me, Ambassador, how many civilizations has the Council allowed to be peacefully annexed by larger powers?" Clix's silence was answer enough. 17, Morrison said, apparently having researched the answer himself. 17 species that asked for help, for protection, for justice. And 17 times the Council decided that maintaining the status quo was more important than preserving life. He turned back to face us. The hegemony thought we would be number 18. They thought wrong. What you did was, I searched for the right words. It was efficient, certainly, but it was also brutal. Surely there could have been another way. Morrison's laugh was bitter. Another way? You mean like the way you handled the Kepler incident, or the vegan uprising, or the systematic enslavement of the Tau Ceti colonies? He shook his head. No, Commander. Your way leads to suffering. Our way leads to results. Your way leads to extinction, General Vorth said firmly. Only for those who choose it, Morrison replied. The hegemony had options. They could have negotiated. They could have found a peaceful solution. Hell, they could have just left us alone. Instead, they chose war. They chose genocide. And they learned that humans have some very strong opinions about genocide. I felt a chill as I realized what he was really saying. You're saying that any species that threatens humanity will face the same fate as the hegemony. I'm saying that any species that tries to exterminate another will face consequences, Morrison corrected. The difference is, we're capable of providing those consequences. He moved back to the table, his hands resting on the surface near Admiral Corvain's head. See, the galaxy has operated under a very simple principle for centuries: might makes right. The strong do what they will, the weak suffer what they must. It's an old system, a predictable system, and it's worked because everyone understood the rules. Morrison's smile was predatory. Humanity is changing the rules. To what? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. Justice makes right, Morrison said simply. The innocent are protected, the guilty are punished, and everyone gets to live their lives in peace. It's a radical concept, I know. Justice as defined by humans. General Vorth's voice was skeptical. Justice, as defined by basic morality, Morrison corrected. Don't kill innocents. Don't enslave other species. Don't commit genocide. Pretty simple stuff, really. Ambassador Clix leaned back in her chair. And if other species disagree with your definition of justice, then they're welcome to test it, Morrison said casually, just like the hegemony did. The threat was clear, but it was also something else. It was a promise, a commitment to a principle that the galaxy had forgotten in its rush toward comfortable corruption. You're talking about becoming galactic police, I said slowly. I'm talking about becoming what the Council should have been, Morrison replied. It's a force for good instead of a committee for compromise. He pulled out his tablet again, and the holographic display shifted to show a star map. Dozens of systems were highlighted in different colors, creating a complex pattern across the galaxy. Red systems are under hegemony control, Morrison explained. Were under hegemony control, I should say. Yellow systems are council members. Green systems are independent. And blue systems are under human protection. I stared at the display, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. The blue systems formed a network across the galaxy, connecting previously isolated worlds and creating new trade routes. When did you, I began, then stopped. The implications were staggering. When did we establish a galactic presence? Morrison finished. About 6 months ago. While the Council was debating the proper response to hegemony aggression, we were building relationships with species that actually wanted peace. The display zoomed in on one of the blue systems, showing a thriving world with orbital installations and busy space lanes. The Andorians were facing extinction from a plague that their medical technology couldn't cure. We provided a solution. In exchange, they allowed us to establish a research station in their system. Another system highlighted. The Rigelians were being raided by pirates that the Council refused to stop. We stopped them, permanently. Now Rigel is a major hub for interstellar commerce. System after system lit up, each one representing a species that had chosen to work with humanity instead of relying on the Council's ineffective protection. "You've been building an empire," General Vorth said accusingly. "We've been building a community," Morrison corrected. "It's a voluntary association of species that believe in mutual cooperation instead of mutual exploitation." "Without Council oversight," I pointed out. "Without Council interference," Morrison agreed. "See, the thing about bureaucracy is that it's designed to prevent action, to slow down decision-making, to create obstacles, to ensure that nothing changes too quickly. That's fine for managing stable systems, but it's useless for solving problems." He gestured to the display. Every one of these species came to the Council for help. Everyone was told to wait, to be patient, to accept that injustice was the price of peace. And everyone found that humans were willing to provide what the Council wouldn't, actual solutions. The implications were staggering. While we had been debating procedures and protocols, humanity had been building the foundation of a new galactic order. An order based on action rather than discussion, results rather than process. "This is why you're here," I realized. "It's not to negotiate, to present us with a fait accompli." Morrison nodded. "The galaxy is changing, Commander. The question is whether the Council wants to be part of that change or a victim of it." "You're asking us to abandon everything we've built," Ambassador Click said quietly. "I'm asking you to build something better," Morrison replied. "Something that actually works. Something that protects the innocent and punishes the guilty. Something that your species can be proud of instead of ashamed of." He moved to the head of the table, looking down at each of us in turn. "The Council has 3 options. First, you can join us. Become part of the new order. Help us build something that actually makes the galaxy a better place. Second, you can oppose us. Try to maintain the status quo. Serve the corruption and inefficiency that has defined galactic politics for centuries." "And the third option?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Morrison's smile was gentle, almost sad. "You can become irrelevant. Continue to debate while we act, continue to compromise while we solve problems, continue to exist while we live." The choice was clear, but it was also terrifying. Everything we had known, everything we had built, everything we had dedicated our lives to was being swept away by a species that had been spacefaring for less than a century. "You're asking us to trust you," General Vorth said finally. "I'm asking you to trust yourselves," Morrison corrected. "To remember why you joined the Council in the first place. To remember what you hoped to achieve before bureaucracy and politics ground down your idealism." He moved back to his chair, but this time he actually sat down. "The hegemony is gone. The galaxy is safer because of it. But there are other threats, other injustices, other problems that need solving. We can face them together, or we can face them separately. But we will face them." I looked around the table at my colleagues, seeing the same mix of fear and hope in their eyes that I felt in my hearts. Change was coming whether we wanted it or not. The only question was whether we would be part of it. "What would you need from us?" I asked quietly. Morrison's expression brightened. "Legitimacy. The Council still has moral authority in the galaxy, even if it lacks the will to use it. If you endorse our actions, support our methods, lend your voice to our cause, it will make everything easier. And if we refuse, then you'll watch from the sidelines while we build the future without you," Morrison said simply. "But you'll still benefit from the results. Peace, prosperity, justice. These things aren't conditional on your participation." The generosity of the offer was almost insulting. They didn't need us, didn't require our approval or support. They were offering us a chance to be relevant, to be part of something greater than ourselves. "I need time to think," I said finally. "Of course," Morrison agreed, "but not too much time. The galaxy won't wait for the Council to make up its mind." He stood up, moving toward the door. "Oh, and Commander, you might want to do something about Admiral Corvain's head. It's starting to smell." With that casual observation, he left the room. leaving us alone with the severed head of the most powerful military commander in the galaxy and the realization that everything we had known was about to change. I stared at the head, purple blood still pooling around the base of the neck, and realized that it wasn't just a trophy or a threat. It was a symbol, a representation of the old order, the old ways, the old failures. And like everything else from the past, it was dead. The age of humanity had begun, and there was no going back. Outside the window, the stars seemed brighter somehow, as if the galaxy itself was waking up from a long sleep. Change was coming, whether we embraced it or not. The only question was whether we would be part of the solution or part of the problem. I looked at my colleagues, seeing the same realization in their eyes that I felt in my heart. The Council had a choice to make, and for the first time in centuries, it actually mattered. The future was waiting, and it was wearing a human face.